Hurricane George is looming just off the Gulf Coast. 4 states are under hurricane warnings as landfall appears inevitable. The question is when and where. From Florida to Louisiana, the ocean is inching closer and closer to roads, homes, and businesses. With more than $1 billion in damage so far, the worst may still be ahead. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Dennis Smith. We're going to go right to Mike Bono in the Forecast Center now for the latest on this dangerous situation. Mike?
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Yes, a dangerous storm out there in the Gulf of Mexico, borderline Category 3, which would be extensive damage on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's a slow mover. There's really the potential for an awful lot of rainfall. Let's take a look at the particulars on it right now on the track, which has been going on as a hurricane only for 10 days across the Atlantic, and very little variations in the movement as it has tracked relentlessly toward ultimately the Gulf Coast of the United States. Centered at 4 p.m. Central Time, 125 miles southeast of New Orleans, with winds 110 miles an hour in areas near the center, mostly on the east side. Movement erratic, but northwest at 8 and 962 millibars of pressure. It has been down to 961. Aircraft reconnaissance is faithfully monitoring it, though. We're looking at hurricane watches and warnings on the map right now. Our warnings located, as we show you, running from Morgan City, Louisiana, including New Orleans, Lake Borgne, Lake Pontchartrain, mouth of the Mississippi, and to Panama City in Florida. Now, east of Panama City, we're looking at tropical storm warnings. The hurricane watches have been dropped. And Intracoastal City to Morgan City, hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings. Now, we have our crews down on the Gulf Coast, and we've been getting some pretty rough conditions in Pensacola, Florida, with Kristen Dodd. Jim Cantori, things are getting worse in Biloxi, Mississippi, and Bill Keneally we've been talking to from New Orleans. Jim is going to be our chief correspondent this time. Jim, how are things going down there on the coast?
Well, Mike, we really haven't seen very much heavy rain in the last 2.5 hours now, so we really haven't had a lot of that. But we'll take you up the beach here. I'm going to have my photographer pan up the beach. You can see some very dark skies up there, and no doubt a reduced visibility, as you can slowly see in the background the casino up there, the new casino that's being built. But that visibility has really come down. That's kind of giving me a read as to where the squalls are coming from. That is off to the east. So it's getting darker up there, so the rains could be entering, getting a little bit stronger here momentarily. But I've been standing here with this handheld anemometer, and we really haven't seen any sustained winds that command respect at this point. 15, 20 miles an hour tops, occasionally gusting to 30. About an hour ago, I had a small burst of 45 miles an hour, but that is about it for the winds so far. But you know, with this new squall coming on down, we could have some winds that easily exceed tropical storm force, because as you know, those squalls can induce the wind field. Let me show you what is going on around here as the rain and the wind continue to slowly pick up. We have problems, especially earlier on when the tide was in a little bit, where there was some water crashing through the dunes and even over some of the road. As a matter of fact, the road not even 500 feet from where I'm standing right now, and it does not take much with the slope of the coastline here to bring that water inland. So we are anticipating problems, and because of that, local police have basically issued a curfew, not just for the coast, but for all of Harrison County. They want people off the roads at 6 o'clock, and we told them that 6 o'clock was going to be our last live shot here, and we would be moving inland. So you can be rest assured we're not going to sit on the coast for any 10 to 15 foot surge, which even where I'm standing right here is going to be over my head just a little bit. So Mike, we continue to see a slow chewing of the coastline with these winds and waves, but again, the barrier islands right now serving as a big protection of this area. But when that surge comes in, barrier and islands are not. We will get to the east of that eye anywhere from 10 to 15 feet, possibly even higher than that. Now that's a pretty good gust right there coming in, probably up to about 30. Needless to say, we'll keep you posted here from Biloxi. Right now, let's go back to you, Mike.
Thanks a lot, Jim Cantori at Biloxi, Mississippi, which is just beginning to feel some of the fringe effects of Hurricane George. Well, Louisiana is on alert. We've had a lot of evacuations around New Orleans, and we've been keeping track of the situation with Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones of the Louisiana State Police. Lieutenant Colonel Jones, what's the latest from New Orleans?
Hi, Mike. One of the, we're watching like everybody else right now, and I guess this is the most difficult period of time because you're really waiting for the bad stuff to happen. I think you're probably looking at some video of Lake Pontchartrain overtopping some of those levees. Lake Pontchartrain is a fairly shallow lake, and it's one of the features that surrounds the city of New Orleans. That's a critical feature when it comes to protecting that city and the people who live there and their property. The wind has really picked up in New Orleans, even though the rains haven't been as heavy as they have been over on the coast. We're going to have what we anticipated to be very serious flooding problems in that city, which is more like a bowl right now than anything else. We're hoping the levees do their job. We're hoping the pumps do their job. The people have done what they're supposed to. Most of them are in safe places now. We've got the roads clear to the extent that we need to out of the New Orleans area. We're just waiting.
Okay, waiting can be a very rough situation, as you said, but I'm sure that your preparedness will pay off in the end, and with any luck, it won't be as bad as the preparedness would indicate. Let's hope. That's Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones of the Louisiana State Police. John Hope, we're looking at that slow movement toward the coastline. We know there's a lot of very severe conditions out there. They've only started to impact the coast, though.
They have, of course, over in the Florida coast there this morning, there was some very, on the open beaches, some pretty good beach erosion there, high winds this morning, and that's continued all day. But it's been a little bit slow getting the higher winds over here farther into the Mississippi coast, although they're just just offshore, and we see winds gusting to hurricane force right here at the mouth of Mobile Bay.
That's right. It seems like the east side, the worst conditions, but they're slowly swinging around. The eye seems to, in general, be drifting to the northwest slowly.
Well, there has been a drift, but it certainly is a drift, and it's not getting there very rapidly. And we may be talking about, if it comes up here to this portion of the coast, which seems likely, maybe 24 hours or so before it actually makes landfall. And that's a long time to cover such a short distance.
Isn't there a threat of some of the high water lasting through several tide cycles?
That's right, because a lot of this water gets pumped in here from the southeast winds, and when the next tide cycle comes along, it doesn't get out of there. And then you have it exacerbated by the fact you have heavy rain, and heavy rain doesn't really have any place to run off either. It can't run off into the ocean because the tide is too high.
The rivers and estuaries get backed up.
They are.
We have some images now that show the potential storm surge with different types of storm. We can first go to New Orleans on that one, and we see Category 1, 6 to 10 feet, but Category 3, we're on the verge of that. 15, let's just call it 15, is between 2 and 3.
Yeah, we could get 15 feet there, so that's a pretty high storm surge. And as we go on toward the west, see, we have Gulfport, Biloxi area. Yeah, now for Category 3, we're talking about 10 to 15 feet there.
Which is high enough.
That's plenty high enough. And if you go east of there and get a direct hit, then you're talking about less of a storm surge in Pensacola.
Right, Pensacola a little bit less, so it gets a little bit more severe as you get toward the mouth of the Mississippi River.
But off the Florida coast there at Pensacola, the waves are going to be higher, and that sometimes is just as bad as having the tide as high as that.
The damage from that pounding comes in.
Yes.
Another problem, the heavy rainfall, as we see on the radar. Any dark green, and especially the yellow, is very heavy, 1 to sometimes 2 inches an hour, and in a slow mover, that really adds up.
Well, it does, and that's why some of the forecasts are calling for such heavy rain eventually, and that's why you see some of these estimates maybe up to 25 inches or something like that. And that's because it's going to be a slow mover and stay over the same area for a while.
Absolutely, and folks really should be doing their job and going to higher ground and taking the right types of precautions right now, staying away from those floodwaters, keep children away from the storm drains, and prepare for very rapid evacuation as you want to have a contact person outside of harm's way.
Well, we hope people in the warned area have already pretty much done that. I hope so.
Right. Time is getting a little short, and all of a sudden the core area of the storm is going to come up on you real fast.
Right. The time that takes preparations is probably getting past.
Well, thanks a lot, John Hope. And we'll keep you posted. John will be here every half hour with us for some time yet. We'll keep you posted as to the future movement of our hurricane. And of course, on the internet, it's weather.com for the latest on this serious storm. Now back to the studio with Dennis.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you, John, for keeping us updated on George. You can see the massive area of cloud cover. Let me point out, though, we've got some active thunderstorms rumbling through areas of New York and Pennsylvania, more like summer-like active thunderstorms, more than wrapping out the end of September. We've got some tennis ball-size hail reported near the Buffalo area in the last hour or two. And right now, a tornado warning still for Clarion and Armstrong County in central PA. So be on your guard. This is going to be a rough night in areas of New York and Pennsylvania. Let me give you a closer shot on what's going on.
Hurricane George is looming just off the Gulf Coast. 4 states are under hurricane warnings as landfall appears inevitable. The question is, when and where? From Florida to Louisiana, the ocean is inching closer and closer to roads, homes, and businesses, with more than $1 billion in damage so far. The worst may still be ahead. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Bob Stokes. We're going to go right to Mike Bono in the Forecast Center now for the latest on this dangerous situation. Mike?
Thanks a lot, Bob. Yes, George has had a reign of terror across the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea. Over 300 dead, billions worth of damage, mostly in Puerto Rico. And now, hopefully the last chapter of this book, as it hits the Gulf Coast of the United States, it couldn't happen quickly enough. Unfortunately, it's painstakingly slow. Let's take a look at the track as it's moved on through the Atlantic and now brings us into the Gulf of Mexico. The center of George at 5 p.m. Central Time was located 125 miles east-southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana. Moving northwest at 8, even north-northwest at times, and winds peaking at 110 miles an hour, sustained in small areas near the center, mostly in the east semicircle. Pressure not changing too much in the last several hours, 2841 and 962 millibars, but the warnings are out. We take a look at our warnings that are running. These are hurricane warnings for hurricane conditions within 24 hours, in some cases a lot sooner. Morgan City, Louisiana to Pensacola, and Panama City, Florida make that. Hurricane warnings are in effect. Meanwhile, a tropical storm warning is in effect from Panama City to St. Marks, Florida, and hurricane watch is in effect west of Morgan City. That means hurricane conditions could even be experienced over in that vicinity. Well, we have our crews on the coastline. We've had Kristen Dodd reporting from Pensacola Beach. I think she's on the move right now. Bill Keneally's in New Orleans. And Jim Cantori, things seem to get worse and worse in Biloxi, Mississippi. Jim? Jim, how are things going over there? I'm sorry, this is Bill Keneally in New Orleans. We'll get to Jim in a minute.
All right, Jim. Okay, Mike, thanks a lot. Again, we're downtown in New Orleans. We're atop the Jackson Brewery, so we're about 5 floors up here. We have had as much wind as we have had all day in the past hour, gusting at times from the north-northeast as high as 50 miles per hour. And there are some trees down, and hence there are some power outages in the area. And by the way, the interstate system essentially is shut down in town. Interstate 10, I-310, I-510, I-610. Anywhere from about the airport area eastward to the Mississippi border, the interstates south of Lake Pontchartrain are now shut. Let's take a look at the shelter situation. Earlier today, it was deemed necessary to open some of the other shelters, so they decided to open the Superdome. Now, earlier, Orleans Parish and also the Jefferson Parish shelters that they had used had all filled up, so they opened up the Superdome, and thankfully the NFL schedule today with the Saints on the road in Indianapolis worked to their advantage. They're expecting some 40,000 people in the shelter itself. They're not on the playing field, they're up on the mezzanine level, and hopefully everybody is hunkered down. But again, we're pretty good. We're in pretty good shape, that is, here. As I have said, our highest winds of the day right about now, 40 to occasionally 50 miles per hour. Definitely not in such a good spot. I'd say a rather precarious spot is Jim Cantori in Biloxi, Mississippi. Let's get a report now from Jim. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon, Bill. This is probably some of the heaviest rain and highest wind that we've had so far. Checking out the winds have actually shifted around a little bit more toward the east. So we have a much more easterly component now than northeasterly component. And our sustained winds as well, Bill, are around 20 miles per hour and occasionally gusting to 30, 35. And just before we came to you, we easily got to about 35 miles an hour. Now, what I want to show you is some video clips of Gulfport, Mississippi. Now, you'll notice the waves here are much higher than what I'm dealing with here. Now, there are, as we've been telling you about, there are barrier islands offshore the Mississippi coast. Those do have breaks in them, however, so the wave action is going to get bigger with those breaks, and obviously that will perturbate toward the coast as well. Again, very, very heavy rainfall coming down right here. Let me show you around for as much as we can see. You'll notice here that one of the shade overtures has kind of collapsed here with the last wind gust that we had, which was around 60 miles an hour. Water is starting to come up on the beach now. And folks, where I'm standing right here, you can add probably about 5 feet, because I'm up from the beach a little bit, and that's where the potential surge could be. So this whole parking lot, this whole beach, and many of the casinos that we have, even though some of them are built on barges so they will rise, will sustain some water problems, no doubt about it. So hopefully things won't get worse, but I think they will as we go on through the night tonight. Definitely a big change, Mike, from when we talked to you just a half hour ago. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Get inside and take a break. We'll come back to you in about a half hour. That's Jim Cantore on the coast at Gulfport or Biloxi, Mississippi. John Hope, from the looks of what Jim is going through. Okay, John Hope in just a minute. Right now, as we've been keeping track of the situation in Louisiana, Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones is on hand from the Louisiana State Police. Lieutenant Colonel Jones, are conditions getting any worse where you are right now?
Actually, they aren't. Bill pretty well summed it up. The wind has picked up in New Orleans. We do have some sporadic power outages. We know of some trees and tree limbs down. We do know that the wave action in Lake Pontchartrain is topping those levees to some extent. So that we had planned for that. We knew that was going to happen. The city officials have taken some protective measures. The great majority of the population in the greater New Orleans area has moved out. And we think that those people who have remained are just playing a waiting game at this point, waiting on this storm to see what happens. They're strapped in. The worst is yet to come for us. I think you're seeing some video there of Lake Pontchartrain. Of course, that's the lake that runs along the northern edge of the city. One of the features that surrounds the city of New Orleans, virtually the entire metro area is below sea level. That presents significant problems from a public safety standpoint. When you dump water into this saucer-shaped area, it's up to the pumps to get the water up and over the levees and back into either the Mississippi River or Lake Pontchartrain. So when the water's being shoved over like that and it rains, you reach a point of diminishing returns. That's when you run into problems.
Well, thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones. I hope things don't get too much worse for you tonight. Good being up ahead of the storm, though. John Hope, from the looks of things, where Jim is standing out there in Biloxi and some of the reports we're getting on the coast, it looks like that the core of the storm is indeed approaching the coastline.
Right. We have indications of wind down here at Southwest Pass. We have gusts well over hurricane force back here at Dauphin Island, also over hurricane force. Haven't seen that up at Biloxi yet, but maybe approaching that in the next few hours.
And in New Orleans, what were the top wind gusts that you saw?
51 miles an hour so far in New Orleans.
So it goes from 51 in New Orleans. By the time you get out to the mouth of the Mississippi, it's closer to 80 miles an hour.
Right, and even as far over as the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, they have hurricane force winds there as well.
So it's coming around from the other side. We could see once again the core of this strong Category 2 hurricane, nearly a major hurricane, really sending the wind and the water up on the east side, curling around the north side right now.
And it's going to continue to do that for a long time, Mike, because the storm is moving so very slowly and not getting any farther east, so all this is going to be on shore there for a while.
Some of the wind gusts showing up, Pensacola Naval Air Station 55, at least the max gust on the automated report, and 51 in New Orleans. But again, we saw about 79 here at Southwest Pass and 81 at Dauphin Island miles per hour. That is pretty strong.
That is, and it's going to get stronger. Remember, the center of the storm is still quite a ways away from land up here. It's moving up that way, but it'll take a while to get there. It's slow movement.
So once again, a prolonged siege of wind, a problem along the coast.
And that's going to exacerbate the rain. Slow movement means a lot more rainfall.
And the salt water levels coming up, that combining with some of that fresh water that can't get out, and we have a flooding problem too.
Compounds the problem.
Okay, John Hope, thank you very much. We'll be back with John in just 20, 25 more minutes. You want to stay with us for the latest hour-by-hour reports on Georges in the Gulf of Mexico here at the Weather Channel. When you can't be tuned to your TV set, though, on the internet, it's weather.com for the latest from the Weather Channel's website. Now back to the studio.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike. We have severe weather also threatening in the northeastern quadrant of the country. We've had tennis ball size hail in Niagara Falls. We've seen rough weather, 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts near Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And just ahead of a cold front, we've got very warm air and muggy air. And that is what's contributing to the threat of severe weather. In addition, for Baldwin County in Alabama, a tornado warning in effect in this area of red. Often in the northeastern quadrant of hurricanes, we have our greatest threat of tornadoes, and that's what's happening in this case with Hurricane Georges. Otherwise, across the continent, across the U.S., this is our trigger mechanism.
Gulf Coast residents are now dealing with the effects of Hurricane George. The storm is slowly coming ashore, packing high winds and heavy flooding rains. Meanwhile, the Northeast, we're dealing with our share of the severe weather, too, around New York City Metro. Some of the suburbs getting hit pretty hard now, especially around Rockland County, with a number of severe cells. Hello, welcome to Weather Center. I'm Paul Emick. First, for the latest on Hurricane George, we'll go to the Forecast Center for a live report from Mike SEIDEL. Mike?
And Paul, tonight we're following Hurricane George like we have now for 10 days. It battered the Caribbean, killing over 300 folks, and now it's making itself known across the Gulf Coast of the U.S. It is slowing down. That's not good news, but it hasn't strengthened. That is good news tonight. We've got certainly live coverage for you to show you what's going on along the Gulf Coast, plus some analysis from our hurricane expert John Hope coming up in the next few minutes. First, though, the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and this is the 7 o'clock update. 29.3 north, 88.5 west, puts it 115 miles east-southeast of New Orleans. Winds now sustained at 110, so it is a very strong Category 2, but at least it's not gaining intensity, and that's where it's been stuck most of the day. The movement north-northwest at 8, so it continues to slow down, and that means more rainfall over the same areas for a prolonged period of time. The pressure now down to 961 millibars. Hurricane warnings continue to fly along the Gulf Coast, as you can see here from Morgan City, New Orleans, over to Pensacola. That includes the Mobile, Gulfport, and Biloxi area. To the west of there, over towards Intercoastal City, we have a hurricane watch. And those of you watching from the Panhandle east of Panama City to St. Mark's, including Apalachicola, you're under a tropical storm warning. And we have live coverage now. Let's go to the Gulf Coast. Jim Cantori is standing by. Also, Bill Keneally, who's in New Orleans, has been following this storm since yesterday. Bill, we noticed last night that everybody had boarded up. Tonight, though, they may be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief.
That is probably true, Mike, although they have not unboarded, I might add. There is a curfew in place in just about all the parishes around the greater New Orleans area, so you'd best have a very good reason to be out there on the roadway. Put it this way, the French Quarter is as quiet as you will ever see it. It looks like Christmas morning over there, I'd say. So the curfews are in place. The wind is picking up, by the way. Mike, we've got a wind out of the north now, gusting 40 to 55 miles per hour. I'm a little protected right here, but I know at the lakefront they've had very high wind. That is bringing in some rather large waves crashing not too far from the levee, but it looks like the levees will stay intact. And as far as the overall landfall goes, if it goes according to plans, as we'll show you the video here, the video is showing again the north wind, and because of that north wind, it's actually building up a little mini surge there on the Lake Pontchartrain, and it's causing that water to come down the south shore and crashing into the areas. Some of the roadways up there are fully underwater now, including Lakeshore Drive. Mike, as we come back, check out the squally nature of the weather, looking out across the river down over the West Bank area. We've had a few power outages, and a report coming in from Algiers on the West Bank of 4 cars succumbing to 1 tree. Also, the bridge itself looks like it's very quiet, so I think the bridge crossings are now officially closed. We know the interstates are closed. And again, as I have said time and time, we are watching the rain, see what the pumps can handle. We know they can handle about 8 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. We have not had more than about, I would guess, 1.5 inches to 2 inches today, but it looks like as Hurricane George slows down, we will be prone to quite a bit of heavy rain overnight tonight. But I think the storm surge is not going to be as bad as we had first feared.
Okay, Bill Keneally in New Orleans tonight. We'll keep you updated from the Big Easy. Now, the Weather Channel's Jim Cantori has been following the storm, and he has moved to Gulfport. We hope to get to him in just a few minutes, but first on the phone right now is J.P. Van Hook from the Mobile County Emergency Management Agency. And Mr. Van Hook, can you fill us in on the latest mandatory evacuations for the Mobile area this evening?
Evacuations in Mobile County right now are Dauphin Island, Bayou La Batterie, Grand Bay, up and down the bay and Mobile Bay and into Mobile River and all the other rivers and bayous that will be affected by any type of surge.
About road closures, any word on any road closures as you head south of town?
We've got a few road closures in the south part of the county. The main one that has concerned us right now is the access road to the Dauphin Island Bridge. Water is over it, and we do have it closed at this time. We've got one road closed down in the southern part of Bayou La Batterie, and there are a couple of others in the south part of the county, primarily from flooding.
Okay, Mr. Van Hook, sit tight there and stay safe. Obviously, you're going to get a lot more rain as the evening progresses. That was J.P. Van Hook from the Mobile County Emergency Management Agency. Now, we can go to Jim Cantore, who has moved his position to Gulfport, Mississippi. Jim, I know the weather isn't the best there. Fill us in on what you've seen during your travels over the past hour or so.
Well, as I've been telling you about all day, folks, we've been moving from Biloxi on back inland to Gulfport, Mississippi to get out of harm's way. And as a matter of fact, it's a good thing we did. Mike Phelps, who's here with the Weather Channel doing some videography for us, has gone down there. I mean, he just got back as well, and there's hurricane force winds down there. Let's go ahead and check things out here tonight. As we look down the road, you can see we still have power in many locations, but it is a virtual ghost town tonight. We don't have anybody out on the roads, which is a very wise move. And you can see, Mike, how the sheets of rain are just coming down in here tonight. Very, very heavy rainfall. Winds probably right around tropical storm force, occasionally gusting to 65. This is our storm cam shot. We are looking out across the street at one of the hotels or one of the banks across the street there, and you can only see Gulfport police driving by. That is about it tonight. Roads are barren. People are batting down the hatches. The good thing is people have prepared for this storm. The problem is, as you're going to talk about right now, we have the potential of being in 24 hours of this, if not stronger, and even the heavy rainfall, which could exceed 25 inches. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, Jim, thanks for the update. Jim Cantore of the Weather Channel, who is now positioned in Gulfport, off the coast and out of harm's way, at least from those hurricane force winds. Let's bring in our Weather Channel hurricane expert, John Hope. And John, the storm, the hurricane is slowing down, which brings about the thought of tremendous rains and flooding.
That is our greatest concern now, I think. Storm surge, yes, in the along the Mississippi coast. We think that might be significant, especially as the center gets up closer to the coast, maybe 15 feet or so. And as you indicated, slow movement means a prolonged period of heavy rain.
We can take a look at the satellite loop right now, and you can see very plainly that this hurricane, if you circle the eye area over the past 5 or 6 hours, a bit of a jog north or northwest.
Yes, but not much. Just a very, very slow movement, about a tenth of a degree every hour or something like that. That's about it.
Not very much.
No.
And the heavy rain bands have been wrapping in, along with some very strong winds with those squalls coming in off the Gulf of Mexico. We can show you the wind gust. Now, as you mentioned before, these are updated once an hour, but we've had higher gusts in between observations.
Yeah, but luckily a while ago we had gusts of 64 miles an hour, and Jim Cantore tells us that they've got winds to hurricane force there. I can believe that. There's 53 in New Orleans on that particular chart. That's the highest one we see.
And that is helping to push the water from Lake Pontchartrain.
It is, and that's what Bill was alluding to there, because you have these strong north-northeast winds, and the lake is very shallow, and it just blows the water down to the southern end of the lake and up against the levee.
Let's take a look at another perspective, the radar out of Jackson, and you can get an idea of the eye. And again, even as you look here, it's very plain that it's not going anywhere, and our forecast models continue to show it to slow down over the next couple of days.
You see a lot of movement there, but those are precipitation echoes moving very fast around the center, which is about stationary.
And a closer inspection looks like some very heavy rainfalls now coming in towards Pensacola, over towards Mobile and Baldwin counties, and then over into the Gulfport, Biloxi area, which we just showed you with Jim Cantore. One thing we want to show you, we haven't shown you so far this evening, is the Doppler estimated storm total rainfall. A pretty good idea of how much rain has fallen since 8 o'clock this morning. And already, John, if you look at the scale up here on the top of the screen, upwards of 3, 4, approaching 4 to 5 inches now across parts of the Gulf Coast.
And it's just beginning, Mike.
And because of that, flood watches continue in effect. As far as the track of the storm, John, let's take a look at the projected storm track with George. And as you can see, it doesn't move very quickly.
Well, it's forecast just really to poke along and not even be inland by tomorrow afternoon. That may be a little bit farther than that, but basically very, very slow movement the next day or two.
So we're going to be sitting here talking about this at least till the middle part of the week.
I'm afraid that is correct.
And rainfall, 20, 25 inches, not out of the question.
In some areas, it might get that much. I hope not too many places.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. John Hope, our hurricane expert tonight. And we will certainly keep you covered throughout this event as we have so far. We'll have more live reports and more analysis on the hour and half hour throughout this evening and overnight tonight. Of course, if you're away from your TV set, check us out at the Weather Channel online service at weather.com. Now back to the studio with the rest of the current weather and your Monday forecast.
All right, in addition to the storms you're dealing with along the coast, we still have a big front moving across the country. A number of storms being felt tonight in New York City metro. Severe thunderstorm watch